El Shaddai. In the Hebrew, this is what it looks like. You saw the Shin Dalet Yud. Shaddai is a masculine word. Shaddai might be derived from the contraction of Shah, who, and Dai, enough, to indicate God's complete sufficiency to nurture the fledgling nation into a fruitfulness. In 17:2, it's all-sufficient one. At Passover, we sing Daenu, Dai Daenu, Dai Daenu, Dai Daenu, Daenu, Daenu. It would be enough. That is where we get this. The Dai and Daenu is from Shaddai, but 17:2 is referred to as the all-sufficient one. In that, he's saying God sustains us like a mother loves a newborn child. The female characteristics of Yehovah. The thing is, this Shaddai is a masculine word with a masculine ending. The name El Shaddai is a masculine, but represents a female image of God. Yehovah created both genders, male and female, as a reflection of his image. The word Shad in Hebrew means breast. So some sages have even suggested that El Shaddai should further be translated as the many-breasted one, which I find fascinating because we've got a God who is so complex and so we can't comprehend God, and we want to put a male gender on God, but he is both male and female, I believe. There are female characteristics of who he is in the description of Shaddai, but his name, the Shaddai, is masculine and ending. And I'm just going through my notes here. In modern Judaism, Shaddai is also an acronym for the phrase Shomer Dlatot Israel. You get the Shin, the Dalet, and the Yud, which is Shad or Shaddai, which means the guardian of Israel's doors. That's what you find on mezuzah. You see, I got a copy of a mezuzah here. It's a Shin, Dalet, and a Yud on a mezuzah. So the Shaddai that's where you'd often see that on your door frame. The acronym is found on the mezuzah, which is a female ending, though. Say you got different Hebrew words, not just mezuzah, that have got a female ending, but Torah is a female ending. Menorah, Shekinah, the Shekinah glory of God, is a female ending. And even, I'm going through my notes here, so disregard that. Yehovah has got a female ending. The Yud He Vav He, the final He, is a female He, because Yehovah took the two He's from his name and gave one to Abram and one to Sarai when he changed their names. And that's the other point I want to bring out in this chapter 17 that you didn't discuss last week. And I think it's vital to pay attention to, of how God used his name to change Avram and Sarai. I'm a visual person. That's why I would chose to ask you if I could show you this visually, because sometimes you can see.
No, it's just, I'm just, what, because I did not see this before. So it's like Abram and Sarah, instead of Abram and Sarah Jones, it's now Abram and Sarai Yehovah.
Right. They've got a connotation.
They've taken on God's last name as their last name now,
right,
sort of speaking.
Right. And it's I like to show this thing visually because we can hear things described to us, and it goes through, and in a lot of cases it goes in one ear and out the other. But sometimes, if like myself, I like to see things on paper. I like to see things on print, on screen, and maybe this can give somebody a better visual of what we're talking about here. Because in 17:5 it says, "No longer shall be called Avram, but you shall be called Avraham, for I have made you a father of many nations." So here's what Avram looks like, and then right in here is where he puts the He. He inserts the first He of God's name. He takes his first He, which is the masculine, and he gives it to Avram, and he becomes not just an exalted father, which he wasn't a father at all when he had the name, but God made him Avraham, which is father of nations. Then in verse 15 of that same chapter, God said to Avram, "As for Sarai, your wife, you shall not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name." And there he takes the Yud, removes the Yud from Sarai, which is princess, and installs the second He, which is the feminine. Like I said, the Yehovah is a feminine name as far as the ending is concerned. I'm not saying Yehovah is feminine in its entirety because he's both male and female, because we have both male and female characteristics in the oneness of Yehovah. And he inserts the second Hey, the female ending of his name, and gives it to Sarah. So you can also say, okay, that's fine. It's a nice, we can put a parentheses on it, put a comma, a period. You want to just say, okay, this is a really good example. I like this. This is good, period. Let's move on. But there's more to the story. There's more to what happened to this Yud, because you don't just use whiteout on God's Torah. You don't just use an eraser and expunge a letter because we don't need to use that letter anymore. We don't need the Yud anymore because we can just put the Hey in there for Sarah, and the Yud, can we just forget about it? That's not what happens, because what happened to the Yud from Sarah's name? Is it just discarded because it's not needed anymore? No. So you have to ask yourself, what happened to the Yud? In Psalm 138, verse 2, it says, for you have magnified your word above your name. So actually, the printed word of the Torah is magnified above God's name, according to Psalm 138, verse 2. So what happened to the Yud? If you look, not one letter in Torah is deleted without being restored somewhere in the Tanakh. The Yud was removed from name Sarai, was later given to Hosea. Hosea's name was changed to Yehashua, and there is Hosea's name, and then he adds the Yud that he took from Sarai, and he gives it to Hosea, and it becomes Yehashua. So adding the Yud to Hosea's name, it was restored back to the Tanakh. I find that fascinating. I find that absolutely fascinating that God does not eliminate one letter, not even the smallest Yud, the smallest letter in the Hebrew alphabet is not removed and discarded because it's not needed anymore, but that God restores it to someone else's name and creates a whole different aspect to this man's ministry and who he is and what he represents. So I find that fascinating, and I hope you enjoyed that.
No, thank you very much. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Okay. Well, Brian, while we still got you, do you want to do the blessing of the Torah readers?